I was really struck by your language when you were talking about like the phrase on the hook. And you had a very specific quote that really I recognized. I had the great fortune in this context to have the experience of being really triggered by a conflict when I was quote unquote facilitating in the group. And I noticed and somebody was triggered by something I was doing, and I'm really curious about it and don't quite understand it. And objectively don't take it personally, but the degree that my own being triggered took me into some really core psychodynamic material around shame, like deep shame, that was kind of outsized relative to what happened. Um, and so here's my thought. Like underneath, I want to generalize and tell me how this lands, right? Like underneath some of the charge that happens around conflict and the need to be right or wrong and not inclusive. Like there's this way, like our super egos are like internalized, right? And we sort of act as if. So I think there's something, at least seeing from the lens of my own experience, right? There's something about how strong my internal conflict is between, I heard Liz, you said, I can't remember exactly, you said something like, oh, I don't know what, forgive me if I'm not getting this right. Like, I have this checklist within myself. If I'm doing it right, I'm don't doing it right, And so something that happens in conflict, whether it's us in the conflict or the person we're relating to, I don't know. I just wanted to bring that in.
Yeah.
The sort of the felt sense of that,
Yes, yes,
the
yes,
jangling, right, discordant
yes, yes,
quality
yes.
to it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I love your words.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean that was the quote about being a bug caught in the net of the into subjective field. That feeling of being, and that whether we want to call it activated, triggered, uh whatever we want to call that, it's we're going down the stream like a leaf, and then we get trapped in this, we get snared, and we're fighting for our lives there, and we're
yeah,
trying to
yeah.
lead a group while we're fighting for our lives.
Well, exactly. Yeah, there's something for me, what I observed in myself. I'm in this kind of flow state where I can feel the banks of the stream, the others in the stream. When I'm triggered, it's polarized, in the nervous system level. My perceptual field narrows. I'm kind of thrashing around, because of my particular way I'm wired, I had like these depressive symptoms afterwards where my whole system was sort of overloaded. I was exhausted,
Yeah.
but there's something about that polarization where, in my case, in this particular story, I had a lot of great, other folks in the groups I could talk to about it and get like a reality check how my reaction was was a little outsized because of the way I was triggered relative to what really happened and how it affected the group. But I'm happy to be sharing this out loud because this is my own learning that this, at this stage of my life is still part of the legacy I carry around that comes up. I have these different qualities to be a facilitator, and when there's conflict, it's like, whoa,
Yeah,
really goes deep.
absolutely. Well, I think that's one of the main things that we all deal with as facilitators and as therapists is, I mean, what the psychological, um, systems call transference. It's so powerful how, um, people and events represent things for us. And it's not about reality. it's more real than the situation, right? It's not less real, it's more real. And it affects us, and and then what do we do with all of those levels of meaning? And the things that the two things that I've discovered, that I've said before, but I want to say them again in this context. One is that we can't change the other, but we can change the dynamic. That one I say all the time. The other one is that we have to be able to pour out when we're triggered in some kind of way. And that it doesn't mean that it's a phase of relating often. We have to say something. Maybe it's important not to say it to the person if the relationship is delicate. Maybe you have to say it to somebody else that to do damage control. But you have to be able to get it out often. And you can't do anything else but to say, oh, and we're going to hear what you said last in that first 12-minute thing when you said, Mikhail, I can't believe you're saying this, right? You have to have that expression when you're activated. And then the group can be the reflector or the holding both. It doesn't have to be that the therapist, the facilitator, or the citizen of the world needs to be so controlled that pouring out doesn't happen. But it needs to be that the group, that the context, that the community can hold that and keep it from being a choosing between, or a right and wrong, or an us and them. So that's what I've learned so far in my study of community empowerment in groups.
I want to put in a word for fear. And that a lot of times I think when we talk about conflict, the emotion that comes to mind is more anger. And I know for me, when I've been in these conflicts, it looks like, and it is aggression or something.
Yes, yes.
But what's more of a secret, let's say, is terror.
Yes.
And so the holding of it, oh, we're having conflicts and we have to talk and blah, blah. But I know for me personally, when it's a bad conflict in a group or otherwise, there's so much anxiety there that I can't sit with it. I mean, that the whole idea of trying to figure it out or trying to do something, I can't sit with it, because on some level,
Yeah.
some part of me is
Yeah.
so existentially threatened by
Yes.
another person or people who I see, maybe totally incorrectly, that they would rather I evaporate or be annihilated. I mean, that's the feeling.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
so I think sometimes I'm just putting in a word for fear, because there's so much, I don't know, in the conflict resolution biz and all that I don't think maybe enough attention is being paid to the terror that's behind the aggression.
Absolutely.
That's more of a taboo, we could even say. It's much less taboo to be the belligerent bully, or that expression in Katerina's email, than to be, oh my God, these people would rather see me dead or something.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. I'm so glad you said that, Liz. That's what I was trying to capture in that metaphor of the bug being caught in the web of the terror. And that's what Koha talks about, that narcissistic rage, which he defines as endless hatred and lust for revenge. That sense of being the big bully is inside of fragmentation, of falling apart, of terror, of losing yourself.
You know, I'm thinking just another word of in Western movie, you know, in the Westerns, that kind of line, this town ain't big enough for the both of us.
That's right. That's our terror.
Somebody here has to die, and I would prefer
Oh,
it not
yeah.
be me.
This nest isn't big enough for all these baby birds, and some have to be thrown out of the nest. Yeah. Yeah. And so one of the things about holding conflict is to make the nest big enough, to make the town big enough to hold all of the people. And that's a big job. That's our evolutionary task to survive. It's making this world big enough to hold all of the baby birds. Yeah.
Which is where in this do we need to assume the goodwill of the other person?
I wanted to say I appreciate what you said earlier about in conflict, there's a fear like I'm losing myself.
Yes.
And I actually have this experience in my body that a part of me is being cut off. I can actually, it feels like I'm losing, or inside me, something's being taken out. And in listening to these comments, I thought, then in conflict, maybe the other person is having the same experience. And that would be such an interesting thing. Like, we're in conflict and I feel like I'm losing a part of myself. Do you have that same experience? What's this like for you?
Yes.
Thank you so much, because I had never thought before about the other person. But so now I have a way of thinking about it.
Oh, that's beautiful. It's
Thank you.
The I, the you, and the us, you know, what is it like for you to be in this conflict? Yes, it's a beautiful question. It's the whole thing about focusing, and I love to speak like that, but you don't have to take it too literally. But the whole thing about focusing is this thing about going to the deeper level, the more implicit level, and asking the other person, what is it like for you to be in this conflict with me? Is that kind of question. Annette, I can see your ears perking up.
So many of my conflicts are with, you know, the other person might not even know I'm in the conflict. You know, I mean, I'm just and I get all triggered by it.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but they know it in their bodies. They may not. And that's really, I'm glad you're saying that, because that's such an important point for us to grab hold of, that conflict isn't just what's explicit, what's said. Conflict is in the air, it's in the implicit, it's in our bodies. So the other person may not know that you're mad at them for this and this and this, or threatened by this and this and this, but they know there's something that's uneasy, something that's dangerous, there's something that we have to be stiff and careful about. And we want to get in facilitating, we want to get that implicit safe enough to be explicated, right? That's what focusing is taking that body feeling, finding words for it,